Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's School Safety Action Forum. I'm Quan Wilson, Marketing Communications Specialist for Prince George's County Public Schools, and I'm pleased to be here tonight with Superintendent Millard House II and special guest. Tonight, we're going to have a critical discussion on school safety, including how PGCPS is working to ensure safety and how you can help. We will also be answering your questions. We have accepted questions that were submitted in advance. We also invite you to share questions on YouTube using the chat feature. We will also answer as many questions as time permits, following presentations from tonight's guest. Before I turn it over to Superintendent House, I want to share a few announcements and upcoming opportunities. As Hispanic Heritage Month continues through October, we celebrate the heritage and perspectives of our esteemed Latino educators and staff who serve as role models, mentors, and leaders for PGCPS students. We are #PGCPS proud that our diversity is our strength. Mark your calendars. Join us November 2nd for our pre-K through grade 12 specialty programs showcase to explore offerings across PGCPS. Applications for next school year open next week and run through December 15th. Join Superintendent House for a series of town hall events to share your ideas on the future of PGCPS. The first town hall is tomorrow, Wednesday, September 27th at High Point High School, followed by Oxon Hill High School on October 10th and Charles Herbert Flowers High School on October 18th. There will also be a virtual event on October 25th. All town halls begin at 6 p.m. and will be live streamed. We know childcare can often be a barrier for participation, so we are offering on-site childcare free of charge for children ages 4 and up. Now it is my pleasure to welcome Prince George's County Public Schools Superintendent Millard House II for opening remarks. Superintendent House, I believe you're on mute.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, and we truly appreciate you moderating this important conversation. And thank you to all who have joined us this evening. We have had much to, quite frankly, celebrate in reference to the start of this new school year. As a matter of fact, last week I had a chance to attend 5 ribbon-cutting celebrations in 5 days for new state-of-the-art middle schools from Hyattsville to Suitland. These long overdue buildings are quite frankly, the standard to what our students and teachers and staff deserve. With these schools as the heartbeat of our communities, we stand to remember that these buildings are to be appreciated by these communities over the course of time. More than 20,000 members of Team PGCPS are off to a strong start this school year, serving over 133,000 students. That's up from our previous year of 131,000 students in classrooms throughout the county. They are our bus drivers, our attendants, who are often the very first and last faces students see on a daily basis. There are teachers who bring learning to life, and they are countless staff members, from building engineers to food service workers to nurses, counselors, paraprofessionals, front office staff, and so many more men and women who make our schools operate on a daily basis. And I'm truly grateful for what they do. In these first weeks of this new school year, I hope you've had a chance to experience and engage with our schools for yourself up and close. I actually had the chance to be in 6 schools today. I typically go to at least 5 to 6 schools on a daily basis, and I've seen this up close and personal. Whether doing a back to school night, PTA meeting, or an athletic event, I encourage you to get out there and be a part of your school community, because if you have, and I believe you know what I know. Despite any of the challenges that we've seen, and despite what you may hear in the news, magic is happening every day across PGCPS. Alongside highlights and excitement of our new school year, we know it's all been very difficult from time to time for many of our students, staff, and family. There was, of course, a devastating, senseless loss of a Duval High School student. Her name was Jada Madrano Moore. And just last week, the discovery of a loaded firearm in one of our high schools, which was Fairmont High School, by a student. We're here tonight because I want to really make sure that it's loud and clear that there is zero tolerance for fire guns, firearms, knives, or any type of weapon on the premises of our schools. Anything that threatens the safety of students and staff is, quite frankly, unacceptable and will not be tolerated. Now, I'm grateful for the presence of our school resource officers, who are the eyes and the ears in our schools, and who quite frankly, I've watched them build positive relationships with our students. We always tell students that if they see something, say something. I'm always one that saying to parents that if you see something, you must say something. And that goes for parents and community members as well. In many cases, this school year alone, harm was averted by students speaking up. A weapon, a troubling social media post, anything that just did not sit right with a parent or community member or a student. We need you to emphasize that message with your child. If you see something, again, say something to a trusted adult, an educator, an administrator, coach, counselor, mentor, it doesn't matter. We also need you, our families, to take the message to heart. Check your child's room, their belongings. If you are aware of a weapon or something that just doesn't sit right that's in their possession, even if it's your child or their friend, please report it. As a PGCPS dad, I know sometimes children will come home from school and go right to their rooms and may not come out except for dinner or go back to school that next morning. But we have to go that extra mile to interact with our students after school on a daily basis. If something doesn't seem right, let your school know something. It takes a village. And I used to hear this from my own father and mother that were educators. And ultimately, the safety and successes of our students is the responsibility of each of us. We cannot do this without the help and partnership of you, parents, guardians, aunts, uncles, grandparents, community members, anyone and everyone through the diligence and attentiveness and care has the power to help us prevent items that don't belong in our schools from ever reaching the front door of coming into our buildings. Now, I can assure you that Team PGCPS is doing everything to ensure that our part is focused upon and executed on. This school year, we will be proactive in implementing new safety measures, including, as you may have heard, clear backpacks for high school students and new security screening technology as well. These are extra layers of safety, but this additional technology and visibility will only be as effective as our broader collective commitment. And so this evening, I want us to really talk and have a convening of those that play a key role in our village for school safety to really help lead the conversation. So I've brought a few friends that will join us. I have a representative here from the Prince George's Police Department, and we're excited to have one of our administrators from the Prince George's Police Department. I also have Gary Cunningham, our Director of Safety and Security Services. Along with Gary, I have Dr. Elizabeth Faison, our Associate Superintendent for Student Services. Emily Pasco with mental health, who is one of our mental health coordinators. Carmen Mack will be joining us as well. Carmen is a teacher at Charles Herbert Flowers High School. And then we have our own Rain Rivera Forbes, who is the student board member for the Board of Education with PGCPS, and Dolores Millhouse from our Parent and Community Advisory Council. Very excited to have her with us as well. Tonight's panel really represents parents, community, educators, student services, and security, and each play a vital role in overall safety of our schools. You will hear important information from each of them. Then we will open it up for some questions, as you heard on the front end. And with that being said, thank each of you for joining us this evening. I will now turn it back over to Mrs. Wilson.
Thank you, Superintendent House. At this time, I'd like to turn the floor over to Dr. Love for an announcement.
Buenas noches a todos. Y otra vez, bienvenidos. La interpretación simultánea en español está disponible esta noche. Llame al 508-924-5155. Otra vez de nuevo, 508-924-5155. Gracias.
Thank you, Dr. Love. As a reminder, we invite you to share questions on YouTube using the chat feature. Following presentations, we will answer as many questions as possible, both those submitted in advance and through the chat. Now we will hear from Prince George's County Police Chief Malik Aziz.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me just fine. First, thank you, Dr. House. It's good to see you again, Superintendent. And I'm looking forward to working with you and agreeing and reiterating a great many of the things that you just said. I'll start out by saying I always have to preface some of these things from the law enforcement perspective that we don't do it alone, number one. So on this call here, I do have some of my top staff, Assistant Chief Hale, Deputy Chief McCreary, who oversees the Bureau of Patrol, along with Major Rickard, and Captain Benson, who leads the school resource officers, and the many men and women who come to work every day with the full intention to keep our school safe and to make Prince George's County this and best county in the nation. So without those men and women who serve every day in my top staff, I wouldn't be able to do it, although I am the face of the Prince George's County Police Department. Number two, before I give out stats, reiterating what our superintendent said, from our perspective, our young people, more of our young people are doing the right thing each and every day. They're going to school. They're learning, they're, moving to adulthood to become productive single day. So there is a smaller pocket, a smaller group of young kids, some who tend to gravitate towards trouble and violence more so than others. And we have to be careful not to overshadow the great number of young people in Prince George's County who attend our schools every day and make us proud to be residents of Prince George's County and are making their parents proud every day. So with that, allow me to expound on a few statistics that we tend to gather more so than I think last summer, the violence was very high in Prince George's County in August of 2022. And our leader, our county executive, tasked the police department with the operation for curfew. In this particular case, the curfew was successful in Prince George's County, but it was specifically to address the violence by some of our young people across our county, which had risen to some levels during this pandemic to some levels that we hadn't seen in a very long time, or escalating up in a way that we did not want to. That said, and our system, I want to talk about the incidents we've had with guns, even since fiscal school year 22-23. And we have had 10 guns that we had arrested, and 2 during the summer during school year 22-23. Our carjacking unit made a gun arrest just outside Suitland High School in that same school year. And over in Tall Oaks, our patrol officers outside of that made another gun arrest. With that said, that was that school year. We moved over to this school year. And I think the 2 arrests, Superintendent House, just briefly spoke on one, which was the loss of Jada Madrano Moore, which devastated us all. And an arrest was made by our homicide unit, which is considered one of the best in the nation, and sure enough in this region in the Eastern Seaboard, for what they do to resolve homicide cases. But nevertheless, we lost one of our young, brightest individuals in print. And a long head, which is the we made the arrest again, that we just mentioned. In Fairmont Heights, that individual appeared to be selling marijuana in one of our schools. And I want to make sure I send a special thanks, though, to Director Cunningham and his staff, especially Sergeant Harris in that particular note, who was able to get that weapon, recover that weapon without incident, where no one was hurt. But taking an individual into custody who comes to school to sell drugs and be armed with a loaded weapon, a real weapon, which kind of made it wrong, because that weapon had a switch on it. It's one of the 47 that we have had this year that turns those weapons into high-powered, rapid-fire handguns capable of severe destruction. So I want to commend the safety and security team for successfully disarming that young person, so that we could take him into custody and proceed with justice in an appropriate way. I do want to mention we've had 2 recoveries. I don't believe those were related to juveniles, but nevertheless, guns were in our schools or on one of our buses, and that was problematic. There's a point of note that I really want to say, because the high volume of guns in our county, they will permeate our school system in some form or fashion, and they have in our juvenile arrest escalating since 2019 for juvenile arrests for guns. In 2019, we had 62 of our young people arrested for weapons across this county who were under the age of 18. In 2020, 98. And 2023, we've had 71. And that's the good news. The good news is that it's a reduction at this point in the year against last year. And we hope that trend continues. But when we look across the high volume of guns or crime or young people involved in using a weapon to be involved in carjackings, then we see that number escalate again from 2021, using a weapon. More juvenile arrests, adult arrests, 21 for carjacking. More juvenile arrests than adult arrests in 2022 for carjacking. And yet, so far this year, we've had more arrests for juveniles using a weapon in carjackings more than we've arrested adults in Prince George's County. And those numbers, they speak of atrocity, and they speak of tragedy in our community. I will move on to say one two other topics, be very briefly with them. this year or late last year, we started tracking overdoses in our high schools. From fall 22 to spring 23, we've had 44 of our young people in our schools have an overdose. And so far this year, we've had 4 overdoses on school grounds this year in fall 2023 to heading into spring 2024. And that's young people who are using a very dangerous drug, some with Maryland. Young kids are using, gummies and things like that, and they're overdosing, not knowing the percentage of the cannabis or the oil inside that gets you high and causes you to overdose. I had to speak on that, and I want to thank Prince George's County Public School System, Superintendent House, the administration, that we work closely with our narcotics division to sit on boards and panels to address this overdose situation that's going. So violence being a problem with these guns over the years, and overdoses following a real point that we need to, if any, I close it out with this, many ways for our young people or adults to let us know what's going on. If you have any information for a tip, number one, you can go to any police officer that you see, and that's quicker than anything. If you see any police officer, to give that information and request that they pass it along to the right lines. All of our police officers know how to give that information. For young people or anyone at the schools, our school resource officers is assigned to each school. Find one of them, you can give it to them. You can go to any police station. Very quick way is to utilize PG Crime Solvers, pgcrimesolvers.com. That number is 1-866-411-TIPS, 1-866-411-TIPS, or you can use the apps wherever you get your apps. Download your apps on Android or Apple and go to P3 Tips. And you can do it all across social media for PG Crime Solvers on any social media outlet, or download that app. With that, I'm looking forward to the questions answer session. I just reiterate, thank you for Superintendent House for a positive relationship. And I know Director Cunningham will mention our Safe Streets grant that is going to benefit both of us tremendously. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Aziz. Next, we will hear from Gary Cunningham, Director of Safety and Security Services.
Good evening, everyone. Again, I am Gary Cunningham, Director of Safety and Security Services. I come to you with 25 plus years of police experience, retiring as a Deputy Chief of the Prince George's County Police Department. And while I was there, I had the opportunity to oversee several units and divisions there. Some of them had to do with gangs, narcotics, community policing, the drug abuse resistance education and training program, the gang resistant education and training program. I also oversaw the SRO program, so I'm very familiar with how that program operates. Currently, we have, and I do want to also start by thanking Chief Aziz and his team, because the partnership that we have with them has probably never been better. In the years that the police department has been working with the school system, I attend their regular meetings, crime meetings. I attend the municipal chiefs meetings, and we share information across the board to make sure that information that they have for things that are happening in the community, we get that information. I can share it with my safety and security staff. So we do that on a regular basis. We are in the process in Prince George's County of instituting additional safety and security measures. Those measures started as the result of a work group that we started last year. As you know, those things don't happen overnight. So we started a work group about a year ago, and we looked at enhancing our safety and security measures, everything from policies and procedures to equipment. And we got nibbles and interest from vendors all over the country and all over the world. And they tried to sell us everything from bean bags, rubber bullets, artificial intelligence, and bulletproof pictures. So what we did was we had a work group of administrators, teachers, principals, staff that worked with the school system. And we sat down and we looked at all the devices. And what we came up with was one that we think serves our purposes right now. The devices, we're looking to put at least 8 devices in every school. So if you can imagine going into the stadium, you're having 8 lanes of traffic that can go in. So we can get everybody into the school once we get everything up and running in about 20 minutes. So there may be a 20-minute delay in getting our students into the schools. The beauty of the devices is that we can put them up at the main entrances. And then if we have a basketball game, we can move them to the gym. If we have a football game, we can move them to the football field. So we are looking at deploying those devices throughout the school. We can, if we have a threat of violence at a school that does not have devices, we can take those portable devices to that school, set them up, and screen everybody that comes into the school. So we are doing that. We're doing it for every high school in Prince George's County. We have selected 8 of the 42 middle schools that we're going to have devices at. The plan is to have all the high schools done by November, and then to complete the middle schools by the spring. We do know that our schools are a small microcosm of the community. So what's happening in the community is going to happen in our schools. The violence that we're seeing in the community is going to spill into the schools, and so are the weapons. So this is just another tool that we're using to screen out the weapons from our school and make our schools a safer and better place. One of the questions that we get asked quite often is, how can parents help us? Every school has a volunteer program. There are official volunteer programs. There could be anything from an arts class to theater or sports. There are ways to volunteer in Prince George's County Public Schools and to make our schools safer and to be a mentor to some of these young people. But there are also unofficial volunteer programs that happen in the community every day. There are parents and teachers and uncles and grandmothers that have access to these people, young people, before they come to our schools. So those are the ones that I believe that a lot of the issues that we have can be solved in the community by people wanting to solve those problems. So we're asking for official volunteers, unofficial volunteers. If you can be a mentor, have a community group that wants to talk to young people and try to keep them on the right track. What we also know that a lot of the information that things are going to happen in the school is in the community. So we have anonymous ways of reporting that. The Maryland Center for School Safety has an anonymous tip line. That phone number is 1-833-632-7233. And I'll repeat that, 833-632-7233. And it is manned by Maryland Center for School Safety personnel. We do not have access to that information. We couldn't get it if we tried. So if somebody wants to remain completely anonymous, they can do that. The Prince George's County Police Department also has Crime Solvers. Crime Solvers offers a reward of up to $25,000 for information leading to an indictment or an arrest. That phone number is 1-866-411-TIPS. And we believe that that information that was received through our Crime Solvers resulted in the arrest of the individual that shot Ms. Madrano Moore. So we do think that those things are very valuable tools that need to be shared with our community and used in a method to keep crime down in our community. And the last thing that I'll say is that, again, this is not something, when in police work, we learned a long time ago that we couldn't arrest our way out of crime. So we can't do this in the school system. We have about 237 safety and security personnel, and there is a difference between an SRO, school resource officer, and a safety and security person. The school resource officer is a member of the Prince George's County Police Department. They are sworn Prince George's County police officers. We have approximately 230 safety and security personnel. We have about 45 to 50 that are sworn personnel. They're considered special police officers. And then we have about 180 that are safety and security assistants. All of our security staff are required to go through minimum mandated training by the state of Maryland, to the Maryland Center for School Safety. Anytime there's a major incident that occurs in a school, we are required to do a critique of that incident, to submit that critique to the Maryland Center for School Safety, and they will review it to determine whether or not we've done what's proper and what's right. So we don't do it alone. The term, it takes a village to raise a child. It also takes a village to keep our children safe. So with that, I'll close. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Director Cunningham. Next, we will hear from Dr. Elizabeth Faison, Associate Superintendent for Student Services.
Thank you, Quan. I want to start off by talking about the importance of a positive culture and climate in our schools. It's so critical that our schools have a positive culture and climate. It speaks to the way a school feels. It speaks to the safety and the environment and the personality of our school. There's research that really talks about the benefits that our students gain when there is a positive school culture and climate. And what research says is that our students tend to have higher academic achievement in a positive school environment. They come to school more frequently. They have lower behavioral problems, lower dropout rate, and they overall tend to graduate when they come to school in such a warm, welcoming, and safe environment. Additionally, when students feel safe, not just physically safe, but emotionally safe. When they feel safe, they tend to engage in learning and have a greater academic success. They connect to their peers and to teachers in a more positive way. And they also have better relationships overall. And we actually want this for all of our students in all of our schools. And so what we do to support that instructionally, I want to talk about social emotional learning. It is an instructional model that came forward a couple of years ago, just before the pandemic ended. And what social emotional learning does is it really helps our students learn the basics about self-management, about managing their emotions, about good decision-making, about building healthy relationships, and certainly resolving their conflicts in a way that is not final, but in a way that leads to positive and healthy resolves amongst one another. And so if you can imagine, this is critical in our schools as it relates to discipline and behavior overall. And so our school counselors are critical in teaching these lessons to students and helping them build capacity and learn this information and apply it daily. Children will not always get along, but it is important for us that we increase their toolkit and the strategies that they have and able to navigate through the difficulties in agreeances and disagreements and being able to build healthy relationships overall, not just in school, but in life in general. And so beyond our school counselors, we've rolled out training where there are lots of teachers who are now certified in being able to teach social emotional learning lessons. Additionally, we're training those teachers to be able to teach other teachers so that social emotional learning can be done just a few minutes a day in every single classroom, whether it's a counselor's classroom or physical education or algebra or English, but that there are moments each day where our teachers are connecting with our students and building relationships and helping them build their own social emotional learning. Additionally, our school system began a couple of years ago bringing community clinical mental health services into our schools where our children are every day. And so this year, we are rolling out mental health clinicians in all of our schools. We currently have a few vacancies now, but when we have all of our vacancies filled with our mental health clinicians, they will work alongside of our school counselors as well as our psychologists who are providing those mental health supports to our schools. When we talk about behavior and social emotional learning and positive culture and climate in our schools, I want to particularly talk about bullying. Bullying is something that we hear about in ways that perhaps parents and students don't always know. How does the Maryland State Department of Education define bullying, and how does our school system define bullying? And so I just want to take a moment to say bullying is defined by the state and by our school system as unwanted, aggressive, and intentional behavior It occurs where there is an imbalance of power, meaning there is one student who is the aggressor of the behavior. And the student usually uses their physical, emotional, or social or academic power to control, to exclude, or to harm another student. Lastly, bullying should happen more than once, but it could be more likely to happen or be repeated more than one time based on the investigation of the administration. And so what we want our schools to be, and that is focus on students' learning experiences. And so when you believe that your child has incurred some of these bullying behaviors, you can report them first, either by your computer, by entering stopbullying.pgcps.org, and you can make your report to this that electronic site. That site, I might add, can be translated from English to Spanish and in French for our parents to make a report, a bystander who may witness bullying occurring. It can be a student. Our teachers also may report bullying via that site. If you don't have a computer, you can make a report via your cellular device. You may download the app from the Apple or Android Play Store and report the incidences right from your phone. What I do want to add is that for every report that is alleged, they are all investigated and all parties involved will be supported, whether it is a targeted student or whether it is the alleged bully student who's conducting the bullying behavior. Lastly, I just want to talk a moment about our quarterly Wellness Wednesday sessions. Last year, speaking of bullying, we started our first Wellness Wednesday sessions with talking to parents about what you really needed to know as it related to the changes in the definition of bullying that began last year. And so we will continue to have quarterly Wellness Wednesday sessions for parents this year. The sessions that were held last year were done virtually through Zoom, and they have been uploaded to our PGCPS YouTube page. Last year's sessions included, as I referenced earlier, bullying, but also social media and how social media impacts a student's mental health. We also gave parents information around mental health supports, school attendance, depression, and as Chief Aziz mentioned earlier, even around fentanyl and how to keep your students safe from fentanyl. If you were not able to attend those Wellness Wednesday sessions, you may go back and be able to retrieve those just by going to our PGCPS YouTube channel and typing in Wellness Wednesday. You may also see our most latest Wellness Wednesday session that was conducted podcast style on September the 13th. That one was aired at Maya Angelou French Immersion's Calming Space. And our presenters really gave parents tips for how to help your child transition back to school from the summer. And so it is our hope that you'll go back and visit the site, that you'll also look at some of those sessions with your student. And the next person that I'll introduce will say more about that. Miss Emily Pasco, she is our mental health coordinator. She is also the person who coordinates and puts our Wellness Wednesday sessions together. And so now I'll introduce Miss Emily Pasco.
Thank you, Dr. Faison. It's great to be here. Good evening, everybody. I'm here to speak to the mental health piece of safety. And it's understandable that many of our students may have been affected by the murder of Miss Jada. It was a senseless act. It's incredibly tragic, and different students may have a variety of thoughts and feelings that we address in the school system. And then I'd also like to talk about how parents can address these concerns with their children. Some things that you can look for, and you might be asking, when does it become a concern? So any kind of change in their behavior, like Mr. House mentioned earlier, some things are to be expected with adolescents, right? Some level of withdrawal from family in favor of, spending time with friends is to be expected. But one thing to look for might be if they're withdrawing from activities that they have previously found joy in. If you don't see them engaging with their friends, or if their engagement with you has been significantly changed. Also, some ways to just start the conversation about this, because kids are talking about it, students kind of have an understanding of what happened, they're pretty plugged in on social media. I think a really important question that parents can ask is, do you feel safe at school? And then opening that conversation, okay, if they do feel safe, what is it that makes you feel safe? What's going well at school? What are the things, whether they're the physical aspects like the clear backpacks or the metal detectors, or the more emotional piece, knowing that they have someone to report things to, knowing that they have someone, whether it's a counselor, a teacher, administrator, or an SRO, knowing that they have one key person that they can go to if they have a concern, is also a really critical piece of feeling safe at school and in the community as well. So asking those kinds of questions, and then if they report something, well, not really, kind of opening up that dialogue a little bit more. Are you not feeling safe because you're experiencing bullying? Then you can follow those steps that Dr. Faison mentioned, or just directing the conversation based on what your child shares with you. It might be a conversation that happens more than once, right? You might want to check in throughout the school year, because incidents, it's like what happened a few weeks ago, obviously bring this up, but feelings of safety can fluctuate throughout the school year, based on multiple big and small interactions with adults and students. So it's important to continue to check in with your scholar throughout the school year. And some pieces that I like to give to parents is listen, validate, reassure, and refer. So listening, when we talk about listening, we're listening without judgment. We really want to hear students out. We want to give them our full attention, making eye contact, although some of the teenagers might not be as comfortable with eye contact. A kind of a safe space might be if you're in the car, right? If you're driving them somewhere, you're stuck in that car. It might be a good time to have a conversation that you can have without distractions and really be able to dig into how your child's feeling at school, if they're reporting something that's concerning, or if you sense something that's a little bit off, maybe exploring that a little bit more. Validate. So if something happened at school, validating what they're experiencing. I hear what you're sharing with me, and that sounds like it was really scary, or I can see how that would make you feel nervous or anxious. Reassuring them, like Mr. House and Dr. Faison and Chief Aziz has shared, our schools are generally very safe places. So what are some of the things at school that make you feel safe? And again, safety is the priority of everyone. It's the responsibility of everyone. So putting the focus on what we can control or what our children can control can be empowering. So if you don't feel safe, what is a plan that you have at school? Who can you go to? And if they can't answer that question, you as a parent then can follow up with administration or the school counseling department to explore that a little further, depending on what's really going on, and getting some more information from the school. Reassuring them, and then referring them, thanking them for sharing what they've shared with you, revisiting that conversation, and also asking, would you like to talk to somebody else about this? I'm always here for you. I will always listen to your concerns. I want to know what's going on at school and how you're feeling and check in with you. But if you want to talk to somebody else, I can help you, whether that's through a community organization, a religious organization, or someone in the school. So Dr. Faison mentioned some of the people that we have in schools. We do have school-based mental health clinicians in all of our schools with a few vacancies. The same is true for school counselors. Each student has a school counselor at their school with some vacancies that we're actively trying to fill. And there's also school psychologists. So just going into a little bit more of the distinction between the roles, school psychologists, depending on the size of the school, your school psychologist may serve more than one school in PGCPS, but they are individuals who are trained in behavior and mental health, and can certainly be a resource for you and the school team. School counselors are in school buildings full-time, and as Dr. Faison mentioned, school-based mental health clinicians. Most schools have one full-time position, but some of them, only elementary schools, some of them have split a clinician. So some clinicians do serve 2 different elementary schools. But those are some of the resources, and you can ask your school's administrative team about those individuals and for their contact information. A good starting point might be your school counselor as well. And then if you have trouble finding out who exactly might be a good person to link your child with, you can email mentalhealth@pgcps.org, and we can help you. We monitor that email account, and we can facilitate a connection with someone at your child's school. So please keep that in mind. We also have a partnership with Hazel Health that offers students the opportunity to speak to a therapist online. And we have that as an opportunity both in our Prince George's County Public Schools and at home. So if you search the PGCPS page for Hazel Health, you'll find a landing page where you can complete a consent for treatment, and then that will link you to a referral page where you can make a referral. You can also talk to your school's professional school counselor about that. They are the designated referrers generally in the school settings, or if you do have a school with a school counseling vacancy, the front office or the administrative team should be able to help you with linking up to Hazel. But it's designed to help students process through things that happen. It's designed to be more of a short-term kind of opportunity, because that's something that a lot of students need. They just need that processing of whether it's grief or anxiety about a specific situation. So it is designed to be about, I think, 4 to 6 sessions, but they won't just leave you hanging. They'll connect you to resources if continued care is recommended for your student. So it's a resource that we're very excited about. It's just an added layer of mental health support that we're able to provide, that we're very excited about continuing to expand. So last year was the first year that we've rolled it out, and we're excited to have it going into the school year and to continue to expand our partnership with Hazel Health. And yeah, so that's, I think, just other things, just reiterating the things that other individuals have said, the importance of reporting, and also having a conversation with your child about the distinction between reporting and tattling. Reporting is critical to keep everyone safe, right? So it's an important distinction between tattling or snitching, right? We snitch or gossip or tattle to get someone else in trouble. We report to keep everyone safe. And anyone can report, which I think can be empowering for students. If they hear something that they're just not comfortable with, having you to share that with, and knowing that you now have the steps, whether it's through the tip line, a bullying and investigation form. We do also have a formal behavior threat assessment process in PGCPS for threats that are made at the school level. So we do have formal procedures for addressing things like that, but we can't do that unless we know about the threat. So just reiterating the importance of reporting threats.
Thank you, Ms. Pasco, for those very helpful tips for parents. Next, we will hear from Carmen Mack, a social and emotional learning certified educator at Charles Herbert Flowers High School. Ms. Mack will share examples of how safety and mental health supports are working at her school.
Thank you, Quan. From a teacher perspective, I want to say that I can teach because I feel safe at my school. And it begins when the students and the staff walk in the door. They are greeted by an administrator or a security professional. And that's where the relationships to begin to have the students ready to learn begin, at the door. And so as they do their walk in the door, and there's a security check to make sure they have their clear backpack, their uniform, and their school ID, they are ready to come to me to learn. And at Flowers, it is an all hands on deck approach, from our food service workers to our custodial staff to our office staff. They are constantly monitoring to ensure that we are in a safe and secure environment. in addition to that, we have or my students are engaged. And so those are some of the proactive measures that we take. The students are involved in over 50 clubs that we have at Flowers High School. They are involved in the Principals Action Council. They are involved in our Student Government Association, and they have student forums around mental health, college and career readiness, how to be resilient, and other important initiatives that we have at Charles Herbert Flowers High School. And it also allows them to have voice in the community. On the staff side, on the teacher side, I attend monthly PD sessions on restorative practices by our equity team. And then one of the things that I'm most proud of is myself and Dr. Boykin have established a family academy. And what we seek to do is foster those collaborative relationships with our students, our families, the faculty, and the community to support the academic and personal success of every student at Charles Herbert Flowers High School.
Thank you so much, Ms. Mack. Next, we will hear from Rain Riviera Forbes, student member of the Board of Education.
Good evening, Superintendent House, fellow panelists, and community partners tuned in tonight. My name is Rain Rivera Forbes, and I'm the 43rd student member of the Prince George's County Board of Education. I am also a senior at Duval High School. And tonight I am here as a student representative, and I'm also going to share the perspective of a student that has been in the PGCPS school system her entire life. One of the biggest fears for our parents is what happens once we leave the comfort of our homes. Youth violence is extremely serious, and although it's not all of us, it is something that has unfortunately become normalized in our community. With the future of students being the first priority, a step we have to continue to take is learning why this is happening to our youth. As Superintendent House and many others have said earlier, it does take a village to raise a child and to protect a child. PGCPS has implemented metal detectors and clear backpacks, which I have at my very own school and do see making a big difference. But as a community, we must do more. A lot of violence happens outside of school, off of school property, and we have to start asking more questions like, what is causing students to take actions like this? Where does mental health resources become involved? What are the signs we should look out for? How can we guide students to more rehabilitation programs? How can the youth partner with the community? Because that's important as well. And really altogether, how can we amplify the youth's voice on this issue as well? What we cannot do is continue to just simply punish students, without rehabilitation. It is true that every action has consequences, but looking into the well-being of every student is extremely important. Helping my peers understand that it's okay to reach out and you don't have to solve it with violence. So we are creating a community and a culture that we can rely on and be united in. Continuing our focus on mental health must always be included in the conversation because it affects every single student. When we are actively prioritizing this, alongside actively prioritizing the steps we are taking in youth violence, everything else I truly believe will fall in line and make a bigger impact on our students that is one step closer to increasing school safety. Something else to reflect on is it really truly does take a big effect when you're younger. Teaching social emotional learning plays a huge role because it helps you to become more aware of the others around you. And it also teaches you how to be conscious to your peers. Additionally, more peer mediation services in our schools where students get an opportunity to help solve their peers' conflicts alongside them. And also letting our students know more about the resources they have access to, like for us to know more about Hazel Health, and for us to also be able to directly enter into our mental health resources so we know the adults we can go to, and alongside that, also knowing how we can anonymously tip as well, because many students are afraid to say what's happening. They're afraid of what might happen. They're afraid of the reactions. So helping alleviate this fear can play a big role as well. As the student member of the board, my number one priority is to hear my peers in our community. I am PGCPS proud because I have been here for 12 years, and I cannot wait to see the rest of my time here. The youth leadership is definitely here to work. We are here to be alongside our community partners and continuing the process of creating a safe environment. When action is being taken, having us at the table can create a big difference. And I thank Superintendent House for taking the first step in making that tonight. I'm looking forward to continuing the work of enhancing school safety alongside my adult colleagues, peers, and community members. And I'm also open to answer any questions that anyone may have tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Rain. Well said. Finally, we will hear from Dolores Millhouse from our Parent and Community Advisory Council.
Good evening, everyone. And I'm excited to save the best for last. As the chair of the Parent and Community Advisory Council, we are here based on the annotated law for Maryland Education, Article 4112. And so although we're here by law, we're also welcome with open arms. Thank you to Superintendent House and the board leadership for making sure that the voice of the parent as well as the community is heard. We are an advisory council, and our primary goal is to really become united in creating a platform for parents and community members to elevate our voices and advocate for best practices. We offer critical perspective and provide advice during and after the decision-making process. As we call ourselves the PCAC, which is abbreviated for Parent and Community Advisory Council, we're committed to working very closely with Superintendent House and his team, as well as the board, to help them to understand that collectively that we can work together to identify some of those best practices, to make sure parent voices are heard, but as our student board member, to make sure that the student voice is also a part of that conversation. One of the things that we do as an advisory council is that we're in a unique position. As Ms. Rivera-Forbes stated, she has been around for kindergarten up until this point of her senior year. I also am a graduate alumni, class of 91 of Largo High School. I have a son who is in the 8th grade at Kettering Middle School, and also have a daughter who is in the 3rd grade at Phyllis C. Williams Spanish Immersion School. I've been a longtime advocate for the past 11 years, pushing for not only expanded programming, but to really make sure that parents understand the power of their voice, what it looks like to be a partner in education. Where we sit, we have a direct view of what's happening. We are definitely on the front line. We need to be in a position, though, that not only identify what some of the problems and obstacles that we deal with, but we have to be in a position to learn, to provide some input and see things from various perspectives. As we're talking about safety, when our children leave our home, right, we are entrusting them into the arms of our PGCPS partners. I look at PGCPS as a part of the board for my son Noah, the board for my daughter Lisa. We are all board members that have to work collectively to make sure that our children get educated, right? And so, which means that when you are having a task force, when you're talking about policies, that if you're not asking me as a parent what it is that I may see or want to add to the table or the conversation, then I don't feel valued. We talk about safety, we talk about belonging. Safety comes when I know that I have a group of people that are not only listening to what I have to say, but are creating an environment that they actually want to proactively hear what I have to say. What I would say to parents is it's so important. This is personal for us, right? Our children are in this school system, so no one can tell me not to have my emotions a part of anything that I do with PGCPS. I have 2 children in the school system, so it is very, very personal for me. But it is personal, and that's why I'm not giving up. I work to advocate for the voices that don't know how to navigate PGCPS. I advocate for parents to get involved with their parent-teacher organization at their school. And if they don't have one, learn and work to organize as a collective, get a buddy system. But we have to do a better job of understanding the policies that govern what happened, what happens. There was the the community task force, what was it, the safety task force in 2022, I believe, that was put in place. And when you look at the task force report, there was no parent member on that task force. And so, but the task force was put into place because the board members had identified a desire to remove SROs from the school system. And so if parents are not tuning into board meetings, if they are not going to the board meetings, if they're not engaging with their board members, they really don't have any idea about the policies that are being introduced by board members who may not have a child in the seat, who may not understand what's happening, but believe that they are advocating on behalf of their constituents who they need to do a better job in engaging with. And so as an advisory council, one of the things that we do is we talk to the board about making sure that they're getting out, connecting with the constituents who voted for them, listening to them, making sure they understand what administration is proposing, and allowing people to have their voice by creating opportunities for people to come to the discussion. And so as a parent leader, as a proud member of PGCPS, I am here to say that community is something that I heard often when everyone was speaking. That is the most important thing for us to begin to do if we want to begin to change what's happening in our schools. Community means that we're listening to people, we're giving people an active role. We talked about volunteerism. You know, let people know what you need at the various schools. Some schools have not yet truly opened the door to parents as volunteers, but I know that's going to change. But parents, we can't give up. Our voices are very, very important. Being in the boardroom is not always necessary to be engaged with your board member. You can send emails, you can send video testimony, but you need to listen and learn. There are policies that are being introduced consistently that you have to know the impact of that policy, because we have an opportunity to let our voices to be heard. And so as a parent and community advisory council, we are working with administration so they can better identify ways to engage with us as community members. But for us, we have to make sure that we stay involved, that we stay connected, that it is it's tiresome work. And sometimes it can be very lonely, but we have each other. We have to partner, we have to collaborate, and we have to remember that this is our school system. And what happens here, it is because what happens here, we all have a role and responsibility of what is happening and how to change it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Millhouse. Now we will open the floor for questions. We will begin with some questions that were submitted in advance, and we will also pull questions from the YouTube live chat. Any of our panelists this evening are invited to respond to the upcoming questions. All right. Our first question comes from a PGCPS employee and parent, Cherie Foreman. Director Cunningham and panelists, Cherie asks, can we please be more proactive and not reactive and prioritize the installation of metal detectors at all schools? We keep having gun incidents, so let's work to increase the chances of catching them at the door before the worst happens. Director Cunningham and panelists, what are your thoughts?
We started this project for looking at safety and security measures a year ago. As you know, the procurement process takes a while. You have to identify vendors. There has to be a competitive bid process, and then the ordering process starts. So we actually started this some time ago before we had this incident. We escalated and moved up the installation of the devices at Duval High School because of the incident that occurred near the school. But we do take it very seriously. We are proactively looking to place the devices in all high schools and select middle schools throughout the county, and then we'll look at whether or not they need to be placed in other places. Thank you.
And I will add to that. You know, he mentioned the procurement process. There's also supply chain process as well. And you know, if these if these items were available immediately, we would probably move forward with the installation immediately. But all of the equipment is not available because the supply chain doesn't make it available right now. So as those pieces of equipment come in, we will be deploying them in phases, which have been identified, and Director Cunningham has done a wonderful job with the organization training and ensuring that when we do have equipment available, we're installing it and getting individuals trained as quick as possible.
Thank you. And speaking about supply chain issues, our next question comes from Cherry Price from James McHenry Elementary School. Cherry writes, I've heard supply chain issues stated as the reason for why metal detectors cannot be installed in middle and high schools at a faster rate. May another supplier be used? Given the fact that 2 incidents have happened within the first month of school, the shooting at Duval and the student bringing a gun to Fairmount Heights, I do not believe we have time to wait until the end of the school year for metal detectors to be installed in all of the middle and high schools. Director Cunningham and panelists, what are your thoughts?
So once you place the order, it takes 8 to 10 weeks for the devices to be constructed and delivered. But there's also funding in place. We can't order things from last year's budget on this year's accounts. So we had to do it within this fiscal year. We did that as early as we could in the fiscal year, and now we're waiting. We got the first shipment of devices in. They're in 6 schools. The next shipment is scheduled to be in here in late October to early November, and we'll plan to have all the high schools done by then. But one of the things we don't want to do is have 10 different devices serving the same function. Right. I've trained, what we've done is we trained our technicians to work on the devices so that if there are any issues, we can literally plug and play. If one device breaks, we can take one from the shop, we can put it in place of the faulty device. If we have 10 different devices, we have to deal with 10 different suppliers. So we did focus on one device because it serves all of our needs, and it's easier to train people on one device and one system, especially when it's working for us right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Cynthia Gray from Ernest Everett Just Middle School. What is the district doing to bring awareness to the fentanyl epidemic, especially among middle school and high school age children? Are our schools equipped with Narcan? Dr. Faison and panelists, what are your thoughts?
So when the fentanyl crisis began last year, what we begun doing was having our staff to go out to schools to have sessions with students by grade level. And if you can imagine, with all of our high schools, we had to begin to escalate that and take a more assertive approach. And so what we did was we trained our school counselors, our mental health clinicians, our nurses, and our pupil personnel workers on how to conduct those fentanyl awareness sessions in each of our secondary school. Additionally, we participated and held a number of parent community sessions in the afternoon. Our school system became the only opioid approved program wherein we were able to order our own Narcan supply and be able to train parents and distribute that Narcan during those evening sessions. Our nurses have been trained, our coaches have been trained. We continue to roll out training across the district of additional professional groups so that we can have more Narcan in schools. And so we've begun already this school year to hold some parent sessions in the afternoon. And it is our expectation to roll that even further down to our elementary schools so that students are aware of the dangers of fentanyl crisis. Additionally, I will say we have been awarded a Stronger Connections grant We're on top of the mental health clinicians and counselors and psychologists you heard us talk about earlier. We will have substance abuse counselors in our schools this year. And so it is our goal to raise that awareness, not just for our students, but also for our parents. Additionally, we have an opioid task force where we have worked with the police department, the health department, and a number of organizations around our county to really talk about, to address, to plan for, and to monitor our efforts as a school system. And so this is something that continues to grow as far as our efforts and really looking at what works and what we can replicate from other areas of school systems and we have not thought about before. So that's what we've done around raising the awareness and providing resources in schools.
And if I could add one other thing, we were the first school security force in the state of Maryland to have all of our school safety and security personnel trained with the use of Narcan. Unfortunately, we've had to use it, and it probably saved a few lives, but we do have all of our safety and security personnel trained in the use of Narcan.
Thank you both very much. Superintendent House, the next question is for you from Sarah K. Harper. Mr. House, many parents were upset that SROs were in the schools. They asked their school board members to pass a bill removing SROs from the schools. It was slated to pass until the school board got disbanded. How will metal detectors make the schools more secure? I feel it will make students feel like criminals walking into the building every day.
So thanks for that question. The first part of that question, of course, I was not in PGCPS to see the disbanding or the potential disbanding of school resource officers. So we've welcomed our school resource officers with open arms, and I think the overall sentiment from a number of our parents, community members, is that this is a discreet way, because if you haven't had a chance to see the actual equipment, this is equipment that you really wouldn't know it's not the traditional square rectangle that you see at the airport. These are two small cylinder poles, almost like pillars that stand alone, but they offer a level of support that really make students think twice, especially a student that might have had a thought about the possibility of bringing that firearm. Now, research tells us that a majority of students typically don't bring guns to school or firearms to school to do harm. They typically bring them to school to protect themselves to and from school. And on the front end, you heard from several individuals talk about the bigger issue being a community issue. And I think it's something that we have to pay close attention to. And that's making certain that we have conversations like this. We think about, from a community standpoint, what we can do to ensure that we're mentoring, that we offer a safe exit from school, offer a safe opportunity to get to school as well, so that students don't feel like a firearm is necessary. But we feel like at this juncture that the plan that we have focused upon to execute in terms of our high schools and some of our middle schools is the plan that has the kind of support that we want to move forward with.
Thank you very much. Our next question comes from Cynthia Cornish from Thomas Johnson Middle School. When will clear backpacks be mandatory for middle schools? Director Cunningham and panelists, what are your thoughts?
So currently it is mandatory for all high schools, and certain middle school principals have elected to do that. That is, right now it's up to the principal. At some point, we're looking at phasing it in for all middle schools also.
Thank you. Our next question is for Ms. Millhouse. Cindy Gonzalez from Mount Rainier asks, can we start implementing consequences to parents and holding them liable for their students' irresponsibility and safety risk?
Well, that's very interesting. That was directed to me as a parent. And so I would say that as parents, we as a community have to be able not only to, and I don't want to use the word self-police, but we have to really partner and identify what's happening in our circles. We know each other enough, and even if we don't always socialize outside of engaging with our own children, but we know someone who knows someone. That's 6 degrees of separation that's always there. So unless we are advocating at the county council level, unless we are advocating in Annapolis for laws to change and to be in place, we, especially myself as a parent, I'm not in a position to really hold another parent accountable other than reporting, right? We talked about not tattling, not snitching, but actually reporting. But I'm also a believer of having those uncomfortable, hard conversation with parents to say, look at ourselves, right? Because we're the first responders who should see anything that's happening with our child before it gets into the schoolhouse. And so in answering the question, do I believe that parents should be held responsible? I'll switch the question up a little bit. I do, right? Because my child is my responsibility. But I also think that we have to do a better job in asking the student what's happening, right? And then having a conversation with the parent, about what may be going on in the home that is now moved over into the classroom. And so, I hope that that's an answer that could be helpful. But if we want certain things to happen, to have some accountability in place, that comes with changing policies, that comes with changing laws, but it also just starts with simple conversations that we need to have with each other peer to peer.
Miss Wilson, I'd like to add real quick, especially from the community member that spoke to whether our security enhancement equipment is the right thing to do. Does it institutionalize our buildings? Is it too much? And I think we have our student board member, Rain Rivera Forbes, on the line. I'd like for her to come off mute for just a second, because she actually is not only a community member, but she's a board member, but she's also a student at a school that recently instituted, our security enhancement equipment. Rain, do you mind sharing kind of your opinion, your experience? I have no idea what she's going to say, but I trust that she's going to share what's on her heart.
Yes. So with 100% transparency, to start from the beginning, when I first heard we were receiving metal detectors, I will be honest, I was a bit worried because I had never been through a metal detector my entire life. I actually recently just had my first plane ride. So it was my first time actually going through an airport metal detector as well. And I didn't know what to expect. However, I can tell you there are drastic differences between an airport metal detector and our school metal detectors. The school metal detectors are like mini poles you walk through. Really, we just go up in a line, you take out your computer because it will set the metal detector off, and then you walk through it and you're done. You go straight to breakfast or you go to class, depending on what time you arrived at school. And like I said, it's a very easy and clean process. It's not like when you have to take your shoes off at the airport and put all your things in the basket, and then you got to stand up with your hands like this. We don't have to do that. We just walk straight through it. A very simple and easy process. And I can say now, since I've done it for at least 2 weeks now, to enter my school, I'm not afraid. I'm not scared. Every student at my school has done it. And we also do have our counselors there to speak to if we have any worries about it. And that's offered at every single school. So I would really say when it comes to looking into the fears of metal detectors, they're not as big as many people would think they are. Because like I said, they're two different types of detectors and they're very simple. They're not scary at all and they don't take up hallway space. So that's my opinion to add on. Thank you.
Thank you, Rain. That was well said again. Our next question is for Dr. Faison and Ms. Mack. Angela Campbell Phelps from Port Towns Elementary School asks, what is being done about students, regardless of age, who have physically attacked teachers? Oftentimes, suspensions are either not implemented or are lost or ineffective. What is being done to protect the teachers?
Our school system operates off of policies and procedures. They provide just that baseline of what we would do in such cases. And so it really is incumbent upon every school when there is an attack on a teacher, according to our Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, around what should occur for the student who attacks a teacher. Those disciplinary actions are determined at that time in that document. Additionally, if a student is suspended out of school and they're not expelled and they're suspended for a number of days or an extended suspension, when they return, we've implemented a process where those students must have a conversation with our counselors and our mental health clinicians, because what we ultimately want to do, and I think Rain said it so beautifully earlier, around students having a rehabilitative process where they really have a moment to process and to be reflective around what occurred, and then to determine what needs to happen next. Additionally, it's incumbent upon us to determine the whys as to what is occurring with the student, if additional counseling services are needed, if an evaluations are needed, if academic supports are needed, if the comprehensive school that they're currently enrolled in is working, how they are performing academically. But it gives us a way of looking at that student on a more global basis. It is our intent, really, that we never have to employ the Students' Rights and Responsibilities Handbook, right? And that everything would be, all would be well with our students each day, and that they would make the right decision, and that they would be respectful of our teachers and our educators, who are often on the front lines providing them the support that they perhaps can't find in other places. And so our administrators will put in place what the Student Rights and Responsibilities Handbook says. If it is an egregious act, then there are levels of what the disciplinary action should be according to those levels. And so that's what we're currently doing. If you would ask other expertise, then they may be able to provide a response from another level. But our office, oversees this student code of conduct. And it really is to communicate not just to the student, but to the parents and to our community at large around what our expectations are from our students when they come to school. And it is desired that our students would have relationships with our teachers wherein attacking a teacher would never be a thought or would never be an act. But in those cases where they are, we employ disciplinary actions for those students appropriately.
Thank you very much. Director Cunningham, this next question is for you from Arthur Bonsu from Oxon Hill Middle School. With the new security enhancements, has the Security Services Department had an increase in staffing to help support this new measure? If not, when will the increase come, because the students and staff can't be equally protected if all of the safety staff is used at the enhancement machines and the building is left wide open for other school violations to take place?
So thank you for the question. The way that we are rolling out the devices is we are not putting them in places where they can't be manned or we have personnel to watch and monitor them. What we're telling the schools that if they don't have the staff to do it, then close down the other entrances so that you can pay attention to the entrances that are there. We have one of the biggest comments that we get from personnel as we roll the devices out is that there is a need for additional manpower. We've made that request for additional manpower for the enhancement measures, but we've not we've not received an answer on that. So yes, the request has been made. I cannot tell you when we will get them, but we are looking at our policies and procedures as we manage the use of the devices in the school. We don't want them to overburden the safety and security personnel, but we do want them to use the devices to ensure the safety of our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Cunningham and Chief Aziz, we have another question for you both. From Frederick Butler from Walker Mill Middle School. He would like to know, how is the county handling school resource officers for the middle school level? While I understand that there are not enough officers for every school, why won't the county allow for the small departments who have the capacity to handle their neighborhood schools, like Greenbelt Police does for Eleanor Roosevelt High School?
So I can start. So we do have school resource officers, and Captain Benson, I saw that he's on the call, so I'll let him talk about his area of responsibility. But we do have school resource officers that assist us with management of the middle schools. There are some assigned to actual middle schools, but not to every one. And Captain Benson can probably tell you more about that. But we do have a good partnership with them, in that if there is an issue, they will respond to the middle schools for us. There is also an adequate coverage grant that Captain Benson and the police department has applied for, so that they don't have personnel assigned to the actual school. They can assign overtime personnel to come in, to check in with the school, to be there for the entire 4 to 6 hours, whatever that amount of time is. So there are measures in place to address some of the shortages as it relates to SROs in the middle schools. And I'll turn it over to Captain Benson or Chief Aziz.
Well, let me address it first before you turn it over to Captain Benson, and he can expound on it. It is 18 of our SROs are in high schools and 8 are in middle schools. The overtime that we do use for staffing allows us to have an additional supervisor with 5 additional officers to be flexible enough to be rotated around to different schools, showing different problems. Of course, we would all like to have more SROs. For our SROs are in more of a mentorship capacity, a role model capacity, and leaving administration to the school administrators and staff, and not be there in a true police capacity. Only when we are called upon by administrators or Director Cunningham and his staff, unless it is something that is egregious or happening right in front of us, we don't deal with things of that nature. And especially with all of the pools that are going towards staffing across the police department now in our great county, then we're doing our level best to make sure that it is applied appropriately and sectionally. Captain Benson has done a tremendous job under Deputy Chief McCreary and Major Rickard. And so I would love for him to expound on some of the things that I just mentioned here.
Thank you, Chief Aziz, and thank you, Director Cunningham, for the opportunity to speak tonight. As the director and the chief had mentioned, the county police, we work in partnership with the safety and security team from PGCPS, and we provide adequate law enforcement coverage at our public schools within the county. We do also work in partnership with 3 municipalities, Hyattsville City, the city of Bowie, as well as Greenbelt City, and they provide school resource officers to Eleanor Roosevelt High School in the city of Greenbelt, Bowie High School in the city of Bowie, and Northwestern High School in the city of Hyattsville. In order to be an SRO and the agency to have an SRO program, there has to be a memorandum of understanding between the department and the Board of Education, which we recently completed last year to continue that program. Again, working in partnership with school security is paramount, and in partnership with the school-based community and as a mentor in the school, our officers are first and foremost adults and mentors, and we respond to emergencies when called upon. Thank you.
And the last thing I'll say, that every SRO and safety security person is required to go through a mandated 56-hour training class with the Maryland Center for School Safety. A lot of the smaller jurisdictions cannot afford to dedicate a person specifically who used the larger agencies that can, if there is any such thing, spare the personnel. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Our next question comes from Sharon Yates from the Surrattsville bus lot. How am I supposed to protect my students and myself on the bus from others who bring weapons onto the bus? Director Cunningham and panelists, what are your thoughts?
So we are working with the Department of Transportation. I set a meeting with them on Friday to talk about safety and security measures. There are some things that are already, equipment that's already on the bus that's not being used. So we talked about that. We talked about looking at additional equipment. So we are working on some of those issues. Again, the buses move all around the county. So we can't put a security person on every bus. It's just logistically impossible to do. But we can look at safety and security measures specifically for buses. We reached out to Metro to see what they do. We're looking within Prince George's County, working with the police department here to kind of have a discussion about their response to an incident on a bus. So we are looking at those things, and there is an active work group working on it. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Louise Mack and Tamara Swinson. Were there parents on the Security Advisory Committee mentioned? Is there the possibility of a parents collaborative task force? Panelist?
Well, I'll respond, and I'll say that there was not a member from the Parent and Community Advisory Council that was on the task force. And so, as I said before, I think it's definitely very important to make sure that the parent and community member voice is heard. And so looking at the report from 2020, it lists all of the individuals that were part of the task force. And so that may give the school system an opportunity to bring that back to the table to identify the voices that may not have been a part of that first discussion.
And I would completely agree with Ms. Millhouse. If that voice has not been there in the past or was not there initially, as superintendent, I'm committed to opening that door up to ensure that voices like this individual that reached out, or voices like Ms. Millhouse's or others have that opportunity. We've truly enjoyed in a very short period of time the voice that Ms. Millhouse has brought to the organization, and look forward to others having that same kind of impact.
Thank you. Superintendent House, this next question is for you from Veronica Douglas. Veronica would like to know, will PGCPS explore more alternative schools for those who choose to be a problem for other students and staff?
So we haven't looked at the possibility of additional alternative schools, but right now I'm in the midst of my 90-day plan, in which I'm gathering as much data as possible. Not saying that it could not happen, but we'll take a look at what the data tells us, whether there's a major need for the future. If that need raised its head, then we would take a look at whether it was something that we wanted to lift up in the future from an innovation standpoint and the budget standpoint for the future. So that possibility always exists, but it's about where are we with the data? What is the information telling us? And is it time for us to lift something like that up in the budget for upcoming budget years?
Thank you. Dr. Faison and Ms. Pasco, YouTube viewer Lulu World would like to know, what is the best way to report bullying? I did the bullying form and got 0 follow-up.
So again, if you ever report bullying to either stopbullying.org, or if you have reported it through your device and you don't hear anything, please follow up with the principal directly of the school. When you complete a form, bullying form electronically, either through the stopbullying.pgcps.org site, or through your phone through the app that's available on the device. That report is sent immediately to the principal on record. And that principal on record has 2 days, according to our administrative procedure, to begin the investigation. Once that investigation is concluded, then the parent is provided with the information. Whether it is bullying or not, any type of disruptive behavior that occurs in our schools is to be addressed. And if you don't hear anything, please follow back up with the principal of record to bring it to their attention. Dolores.
Yeah, Dr. Faison, I really appreciate you reiterating what the policy is and the timeline. And if I can just take a brief moment, Ms. Wilson, just to share a scenario that I myself had experienced last school year. My son, now as you know, as vocal as I am as a parent, I experienced probably the same situations that any parent who does not or have not yet had to really navigate the system like I have. My son last school year, was in middle school, 7th grade, was threatened by another student. The student actually, with amongst another group of students, threatened to kill my son. And then later on that day, the friends of that same student followed my son to the bus and began to have some verbal back and forth with him, and stated to him if he fought back with this gentleman that they would jump him. And so when my son came home, what we do every day is we debrief. And so Superintendent House, when you mentioned when your child comes in, they can just pretty much go to their room, we debrief. And we do a 15-minute every day where we talk about what happened socially, emotionally in that day, academically what happened, what he wanted to change. But when he shared that story with me, you can only imagine how infuriated I was as a parent. And so Mama Bear became activated, and I wanted to get in my car and go up to the school. I didn't know about it until later on that evening, around 5 or so. School gets out at 2:45. So when I called the school the next day, and I emailed and I advised the assistant principal what happened. And I said to the assistant principal, I understand that you have a 24 to 48 hour, because I know the policies. I read the policy. I said, but we don't have 24 or 48 hours on this. And so I understand that there's a policy in place, but there are times that we are stating and we are asking as parents that people are thinking through the information that we may be sharing, openly communicate what is happening, and don't come back and say, well, the policy states. Because what I was not giving was 24 or 48 hours for someone to come back to me. What I do appreciate with the Principal Struthers and Assistant Principal Matthews is the way that they handled the situation. They immediately did the investigation, called all parties into play. But what they did was they kept me informed. And I didn't have to wait a day. I waited, maybe a couple of hours because I told them that's all I had, right? But I just need us to understand we do have practices in place. But what also happens from an emotional standpoint, we're talking about social and emotional, I went into a position of I have to protect my child by any means necessary. And so I went into fight or flight. I automatically wanted to fight, but I had to bring myself to a position to understand that I had to give the school the time to do what they needed to do. My son, the only reason why he went to school, because after his father and I spoke about it, I said to him, how safe do you feel? Miss Hampton, the school counselor, gave me some tidbits early in the school year and told me to ask my son his starting 5. And I encourage every parent to do so. in that starting five, with what 5 people are in that building do you feel comfortable with if you have a problem to speak to? He couldn't give me 5. He gave me 3 people. It didn't matter as long as he had one person. He said he felt comfortable with going back to school that next day. And with him being comfortable, because he didn't know the students, and then the reassurance that the school gave me and how they kept me abreast, I felt safe. I felt very comfortable, but that's not always the scenario. So I just need, as a school system, for us to recognize, yes, there are policies and practices that are in place, but the leadership at the school, they also have to be mindful of, if the principal and the assistant principal are investigating, then a school counselor, somebody has to keep the parent involved timely. And realistically, 24 and 48 hours is not always timely. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Millhouse. Ms. Pasco, did you want to add something?
Yes. First, I just want to thank Ms. Britt Millhouse for sharing that. I could I'm a parent as well, so I could feel my heart dropping when you shared the beginning of that story, because I can only imagine how emotional that was for your whole family. And you're correct. You know, there's the bullying procedure that allows 24 for 48 hours. There's also the threat assessment administrative procedure. And your child experienced a direct threat. So that elevates it. So I'm glad that you trusted your instincts and you took it. You did not wait for that bullying completion, because you knew that it was more immediate than that. So if you have that sense as a parent, and if your child is being threatened, there is another procedure for investigating those direct verbal and physical threats. So there can be some overlap between the threat assessment process and the bullying reporting process. So just kind of making that distinction, and that reiterating what you shared, to trust your instinct as a parent. And if you think that something's not moving fast enough, or you think that you're not sure if someone has received your report of bullying or if someone has looked at it, please follow up with your administrator. And again, just thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure that a lot of parents are now more informed and will be better able to navigate situations like that.
Yeah, and I just want to add, knowing the policy, right? Because I know the policy. I read them every time you all make any update, right? I read the policy because I need to understand what are the governing documents. And I will say, not everyone knows. So it was easy for someone to say, oh, we have 24 to 48 hours. No, based on policy such and such and such, you do not, right? And the situation calls for us to be a little bit more aggressive in the approach. So what do you need from me? But what I want to also say is that I built that relationship with the school counselor. Like, the mental health, staff people are, to me, some of the most important people. I need the teacher to teach content, and I need to be able to partner with the mental health staff that also give me guidance on things that I need to look for, what may be happening. Like, we just went through the loss of my father. That was huge. I reported to them, these are the things that are happening at home. I need you all to keep eyes on him at home. And this is what eyes on him in the school, and this is what I'm doing at home. But I, as a parent, understand the importance of partnering. And when people don't welcome me, I create a space for myself. So you're going to let me in regardless, right? So, but it's the way I do it, because I understand that collectively we have to do this together. Thanks.
Absolutely. The next question is for Dr. Faison and Ms. Pasco. Does PGCPS have mental health clinicians available, or do the students have to be referred to outpatient mental health clinics in Prince George's County? And this question is from Ophelia, one of our YouTube viewers.
Emily, I'll let you take that one.
I was wondering if you were going to. Yes. So yes, all of our schools do have a designated mental health clinician position. We partner with about 10 community organizations. We've heavily vetted their agencies, and they hire the clinicians, and we contract with them We train them on our PGCPS procedures. We guide them in working with administrative teams and the referral process in schools. But these are services that are available to all students free of charge in the school building. So that is certainly an option. Again, like Dr. Faison mentioned, there are some vacancies. There is a mental health shortage nationwide that spans across therapists, social workers, professional school counselors, and school psychologists. So there are some vacancies that we are trying to fill, and some shortages that we're navigating. But all schools have a mental health clinician. If you're not sure who yours is, you can contact your administrator or your professional school counselor. But sometimes, you know, that mental health clinician can connect you to outside resources. So maybe your student is doing very well in school and that's a safe place for them, and they don't want or need to be taken out of class or their social environment at school for counseling. They might be able to direct you to a community organization, if it's their own organization or something else in the community, for you to seek services outside of school hours. So that is an option as well. And also, if you're having any difficulty with that, again, you can email mentalhealth@pgcps.org. We can help you.
And I just only add to that, mental health services are available through Hazel at home from 7 in the morning until 7 in the evening. So again, using the example that Ms. Pasco gave, if there is not a need, perhaps more chronic, to receive counseling services in the school, your student can receive those services right in the home through teletherapy, beginning 7 in the morning through 7 p.m. in the afternoon.
Thank you. Very, very helpful, ladies. Panelists, our next question is from YouTube viewer Tammy O'Donnell. She would like to know, will PGCPS provide all of these resources and providers to charter school students too? Asking charters to pay for them is unfair. Charter students are PGCPS students as well. Panelists?
In terms of mental health clinicians, we began this phasing in approach a couple of years ago, beginning with 90-some schools, graduating to 168 schools, and this year, 144, then 168 this year to all of our schools. And so this year is a year where we are phasing in Hazel to all of our charter schools as well as our elementary. Our charter schools were the recipient of mental health clinicians a couple of years ago when we rolled it out for all secondary schools. And so mental health clinicians have been available in our charter schools. This year, we're rolling out Hazel to our elementary and to our charters specifically this year. But resources, yes, are available in our charter schools this year.
Thank you so much. We are now approaching our final question of the evening from Jamie Rosales within the YouTube chat feature. Jamie would like to know, is there a way to inform the parents about attendance earlier than 6 o'clock in the evening? That would be a good way to ensure safety for our kids and us. Panelists?
I'm assuming they may be referring to a robocall or a school messenger call that goes home to parents. And so perhaps 6 p.m. is the time that's designated by school messenger, as it's believed that perhaps parents are home from work. Those who are not teleworking may have made it through their work day and through the traffic to get home to actually receive that call. But great recommendation, and perhaps that's something that our Office of Communications as well as the T3 office can partner to address.
Thank you so much, Dr. Faison. And to all of our viewers this evening, thank you for your questions this evening and participation in our School Safety Action Forum. I will now turn it back over to Superintendent House for closing remarks.
Thank you, Ms. Wilson, and we appreciate you facilitating a beautiful opportunity for us to engage with our community this evening. I want to emphasize that PGCPS schools provide a safe environment for our scholars on a day-to-day basis due to the strong commitment not only of our teachers, staff, students, and community. I was reminded by Mrs. Millhouse earlier that this is a collective effort, a community effort, not just the school system's efforts, not just the parents' effort. It's a collective effort. Now, I also hope you will join me in the coming weeks for one of my 4 listen and learn community town halls that begin actually tomorrow night. And tomorrow night will be at High Point High School. So looking forward to engaging even more in our community. There will be 3 in-person events and 1 virtual town hall. I look forward to hearing from you all and meeting with our community as much as possible. Thank you to everyone, and have a great evening.
Thank you.